An Indian netizen left a message criticizing me, saying that Boeing's frequent accidents are because Boeing's management wants to cut costs, and it has nothing to do with Indians. He also sarcastically said, "If Boeing recruits a large number of Indians, doesn't it just show that Indians are competitive and Chinese cannot win the recruitment?" To be honest, every time I see Indians with overflowing self-confidence, I will be very happy, because my channel almost never has to find materials, and there are so many materials in the comment area every day that I can't do them all. In this video, we will talk about the topic of airplanes. Let's talk about the facts first, so as not to make these Indian netizens confused by complex reasoning. Boeing was once the world's top airline, and its military aircraft, civil aircraft, and even spacecraft were all world-class. When Boeing dominated the sky, the Chinese didn't even understand the MiG-21. To be honest, China's aviation technology was not much more advanced than India 30 years ago. At that time, if a Russian engineer came to a Chinese aircraft manufacturer, everyone wanted to see it and broaden their horizons. As for the engineers of Boeing in the United States, they are like gods, and it is a major event in life to be able to see one. After Boeing hired Indian employees on a large scale, the problem of Hindustan Aeronautics Company constantly crashing planes was transmitted to Boeing. Boeing passenger planes can be said to have frequent accidents, and the company's reputation has plummeted. 2 poor astronauts are stranded in space because of Boeing's safety hazards and are still waiting for rescue. India's aviation market is only 1/6 of China's, and Boeing employs 6,000 engineers in India and only 2,000 in China. Such a huge contrast cannot be simply explained by cost savings. Americans make money from China and export a large number of aircraft to China, but they are wary of the Chinese, fearing that their technology will be stolen. At the same time, Boeing purchases Indian parts on a large scale to replace Chinese parts, under the euphemism of reducing costs. Now the technology is preserved, but it has been Indianized. When they found that China's titanium alloy parts were replaced by aluminum alloy parts by Indian suppliers, and when they found the shitty code left by Indian software engineers, they realized that they had made too many mistakes. And a large number of Chinese engineers had no chance to enter Western companies like Boeing, so they could only join China's aviation technology companies, which kicked off the great revolution of China's aviation technology. The Chinese started by imitating the outer shell of Russian aircraft and manufacturing landing gear, tires, doors, seats, and screws. Then they started to assemble the whole machine, imitating the Russian engine and flight control system. For 20 years, the Chinese just buried their heads in work and regarded catching up with Russia as an important goal. Boeing was a goal that they dared not even think about. In 1987, when the Chinese were still imitating the MiG-21, India proposed an ambitious LCA fighter plan, which is today's Tejas fighter. The aircraft is positioned at the high end, to reach the advanced level of the 4th-generation fighter, and at the same time it must be able to take into account many functions such as air combat, ground attack, and aircraft carrier takeoff and landing. The Indians kept adding indicators to the fighter project, which simply scared the Chinese. Chinese engineers were puzzled as to why Indians, who are also from a developing country, could surpass scientific laws and become members of the 4th-generation fighter elite club overnight, while the Chinese were not even qualified to be security guards at the door of the club. But 20 years later, in 2007, China's 4th-generation fighters J-10 and J-11 had been installed on a large scale, and the 5th-generation fighter J-20 entered the actual research and development stage, while India's Tejas fighter was still in testing state. Most of China's older generation of engineers retired, and countless young people entered the aerospace field. They have excellent professional qualities, flexible thinking, and great self-confidence. Their professional qualities are not as good as those of Americans, but they are not worse than those of Indians, right? 4 years later, China's 5th-generation fighter J-20 completed its maiden flight. Then China spent another 10 years to increase the production of J-20 to 300, surpassing F-22, and becoming the world's most equipped twin-engine heavy fifth-generation aircraft. China has overcome the problem of aviation engines, launched armed helicopters such as Z-9 and Z-10, large transport aircraft, tankers, and early warning aircraft based on Y-20, and also launched commercial aircraft such as C-909 and C-919. At the end of 2024, China intensively tested two stealth fighter bombers, the H-20 Heavy Stealth Bomber, and also demonstrated the hydrogen-oxygen rotating detonation engine to drive the next-generation prototype to fly at extremely high speeds. When China manufactured the J-20, Western media could still accuse China of plagiarism. But when faced with China's new fighters and engines that the West did not have, Western media were silent. It seems that Indian magic oil is not always effective. What's more frightening is that the Chinese used to have an inexplicable awe for Western white technology. No matter what organization it is, as long as there is a white-skinned, blue-eyed person joining, he must be a core expert. But when Boeing hired Indians on a large scale, the Chinese suddenly felt that the projects Boeing didn't seem too magical. If Indians can do one thing well, then the Chinese can definitely do it better. So China is not only going to engage in military industry, develop new fighters, bombers, tankers, early warning aircraft, armed helicopters, etc. But China is also going to join the commercial aircraft market and compete head-on with Boeing and Airbus. When the Chinese compete with the Indians, they always have an inexplicable psychological advantage, which may be caused by the overwhelming victory in the war in 1962. At that time, a temporary combat team composed of 3 PLA soldiers chased the Indian Artillery Company and seized a large number of weapons and supplies. Since then, when it comes to Indians, the Chinese will smile contemptuously. So an Indian netizen asked me, "You make videos every day to mock India, can't you change the topic?" I answered helplessly. I also want to change the topic. But if there are 10 big jokes on the earth every day, 8 of them are starring India, how can you let me pass them? Where can I find such good topics? China's 6th-generation fighter is coming. India has developed the 4th-generation Tejas fighter for decades, but it has not yet been mass-produced. The crash rate of all aircraft repaired by Hindustan Aeronautics will be greatly increased. India is the country with the most crashes in the world, and the Indian Chief of Defense Staff died in a helicopter crash. Then Indians advocated on the internet that Tejas defeated J-20, Rafale fighter crushed J-35, and Void AMCA led the world, becoming a cancer in the YouTube comment area. If I don't discuss such good topics, what topics do you want me to talk about? After the decline of Boeing, facing the rising SpaceX, the Chinese are no longer afraid. No matter how mysterious it is, no matter how grand its plan is, the Chinese have the confidence to compete with it. Moreover, I suggest that the Chinese government subsidizes some Indians to enter the United States through H-1B visas and join SpaceX and NASA. The situation will become favorable to China. Americans, recruit more Indian engineers and wait for a new round of Chinese technology tsunami. The next stop is the moon. As for those Indians who madly scold me in the comments section, I will give you a line from Yasuo in League of Legends. This story is not yet finished. 面对疾风吧！